Hello, everyone, and welcome to my show that's hosted by Unique Voices in Films in collaboration with The Path of Consciousness. Today, my guest is Anamika Dutta. Hello, Anamika.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, this has been an interesting relationship. You've interviewed me twice, and here I am interviewing you. And I believe one day we'll end up meeting in person.
Of course,
I
I
hope.
hope to see that day soon.
So, Anamika is a marketing consultant specializing in personal branding, interpersonal communication, and corporate storytelling. She helps brands and creators define, shape, and amplify their narratives with authenticity and impact. With a bachelor's degree in English literature and a master's in communication, Anamika collaborates with clients across the EU, Middle East, and Asia Pacific, building meaningful connections through strategy and creativity. So you have a lot of other things going on, including so you're multifaceted creative, a fashion model, content creator, writer, spoken word artist, and podcast producer. I was not as aware of your extensive education, whether like in literature and communication. And I'm just interested to learn a little bit about your background and what inspired you to move from studying literature and communication into personal brand consulting.
It's quite a long story. I'll try to make it short as
You
possible.
don't have to make
But
it short.
it started from the very beginning when I was born. No, it actually, I had a quite a bit of an isolated childhood. So it was more like I was homeschooled and books were my only friends. I read a lot. So I grew up with stories, is what I tell everyone. I loved reading stories. So I knew that I had to eventually go into literature and learn more about authors, novels. I grew up with Dickens or Charlotte or like Emily Bronte or Jane Austen and those books. And I knew that I lived within those characters and those stories. So I knew that literature was my way to go. But in a way, when you learn literature or when you read literature, it's kind of like the outline of the story. You know a lot, you know the characters, you get stories, but you just don't know how to express all of that into the world. So I feel like communications kind of helped me a lot to put those stories out there, frame them better. And if I'm thinking a lot, imagine a lot, I think a lot when you read a lot, but then there is no better way to put it out there. But when you learn communications, it's more of like a structured way when whatever you're thinking or imagining, you can put it out there much better. So when I was doing my communications degree, my master's, marketing was a big thing. It was kind of like the next big career move. And those influencers, those aesthetic life was very much on trend. People were YouTube was a big thing. There were so many YouTube creators that became millionaire radically. And I was seeing their journey and I was looking at myself and I was thinking that this is probably not sustainable because at that time, if you look at the creators, it was all about consumerism and it was all about excessiveness. So people were very much attached to having more. So it was the quality didn't matter so much, the quantity mattered a lot. So I kind of knew that the narrative shift was kind of inevitable. So that excessive aesthetic life was not going to be sustainable. People are going to want to be more authentic in the future. So the story is how would brands or how would creators stick to their narrative. So I knew that a change is coming. So personal branding was the way to go. So I studied literature, I did my communications, and I knew that if I wanted to be in marketing, personal branding was going to be the future of marketing. Even if you look at brands right now, any creator, if you look at them, that aesthetic style is no longer there. People are kind of aligning their own journeys into their brands, whether products or services. If an influencer is coming out with a brand or a line of products, it's very much deeply rooted to where they come from. So their own journeys, because that is what people find a connection. Aesthetics, it's not creating a connection, but authenticity is what helps you build a connection and a deep connection. So that is the entire journey of like telling stories, living in fairy tales or in books to sharing real journeys, real people coming up with real ideas that help other feel that they're empowered and it resonates with their ideas as well.
That's interesting. When you're describing it now, it makes sense to me, but I never really studied it, the difference.
Mhm.
And I have seen, like you, a lot of creators who become popular, famous very quickly. And then honestly, some of them, yeah, you don't see them. It seems like it's not long term. Whereas the
Mhm.
authentic stories stick around and you remember the stories. I often tell people, I tend to sometimes forget people's names, but I say, I don't forget your story.
Mhm.
When they approach me, I'll say, but I remember that this is what happened to you, right? Because I'll remember that the richness of the story more so than just the fact that, just their name, that it was published somewhere, but what was the story behind that name, you know? So
Yeah.
so when you're working with clients globally, how do you adapt brand storytelling to different cultural contexts? So do you think this is across the line with different, whatever your background is? It's basically
Mhm.
at the heart is basically what you just defined. And if so, still, how do you work with different communities and different backgrounds?
Mhm. Yeah, I think for me, what helps me the most is that I'm not very deeply rooted to where I come from, because where I come from is not very instilled within me, because I've lived in different parts of the world. I've worked with so many people. So it's not, I'm very adaptive when it comes to other culture and their nuances. When I'm working with someone who is from a very different culture, what I try to understand is what they value the most. So in some cases, humility is valued. If you go in other places, you have to be confident. The confidence is so much more valued. Like if you go to say US, they prefer a very bold narrative. They want to be out there, outspoken. It's just so much out there. But if you want to be bold, in India it doesn't work. So if a creator wants to come up with a line of products, I will give you an example. There's a founder, and she created a brand. It's a women's wellness brand, which is basically to satisfy yourself. So that's quite a taboo matter in India. You cannot be bold and confident about it. So I had to kind of create a narrative, which is very subtle, that it helps you do things better in a way that you have to all the ads, all the reels, and every all marketing campaigns, they were very subtle. There was boldness, but there was also kind of that simplicity out there that I could actually express. So this is what the product is all about. This is what it's going to do for you. But it's not like very much out there. Whereas you see marketing campaigns in the US, they're just very much pretty much this is what it is. This is what you get. There is no imperative that okay, there is something subtle underneath. There's so much substance underneath. No, they just like to go all out. So when it comes to different cultures, I think the number one thing is to learn what they value, what they prefer, and then learn the nuances and try to connect their values with their vision, where they want to launch that product, what kind of story they want to tell with that product. There's also this creator I worked with. She's quite a famous influencer, and she wanted to start up. She's rooted in India. She's Indian, but she lived in the EU, and she wanted to come up with a brand of products. And we just had to figure out what product would be that kind of that authentic storytelling. So when it comes to being rooted in India, one thing maybe you've heard this, that Indians have great hair. We have luscious hair. We're
Yes, you
known for
do.
our hair.
I don't just
And
hear it. I go into Indian stores to get the oils for the hair.
yes, so
So
we
yes.
came up with that idea. She came up with a hair care brand. So she started with an oil and now it's a global brand, and she does all kinds of products, lip products, makeup products, and everything. But she started with something that is very deeply rooted in Indian, which is hair. And so, yeah, that's how it works basically. Your
Well,
personal branding, your stories. Yeah, sorry. I,
Well, no, I have a question then. Let's go back to
Mhm,
the other client who was being a
mhm,
little bit more taboo. And then you said you had to
mhm,
like soften the message. And how did that work? I'm curious that, okay, so it is something that's taboo. I mean, for me, even as an author, there's certain, I explore all subjects, and some subjects,
mhm,
people are not as comfortable with. And how do you what, or when you did soften that, how was it received? Did you see that
Mm.
there was a difference? Was it received, or was it still considered taboo because of the topic?
It's still in some, I would say in India, it's quite a big country. So the tier one cities, it's quite easily accepted. But tier two, tier three, those women, they still have to, if they want to use something for their wellness or for their happiness, they still have to hide it or do something. But the narrative was more like it's as soft as a rose, but it doesn't prick you with thorns. So this is something like, some kind of narrative that is very soft, and you know that it helps you do something, but you cannot really explicitly say it and put it out there. So in some campaigns, in some cities, the tier one cities accepted it really well. They thought it was very creative coming up with that brand. But I believe that tier two and tier three cities, they needed more of a very diluted message. And I don't think that India is quite ready for that product yet in tier two, tier three cities. But those, some of the campaigns worked really well. In some cases, we had those old movies where if two people are kissing, you just kind of put like two roses there and you don't show that they're kissing. Those kind of
Mhm.
marketing campaigns. So we tried to kind of put it that, this kind of reminds you of those old Bollywood movies where romance is not very explicit, but you know that those people are doing something they shouldn't be doing. So it was a very fun, young idea that we turned into so many fun
It
campaigns.
sounds
And
like it. And it sounds like it's also, this is kind of getting a backstage of how you work. That's why when I
mm,
asked, so now you kind of are looking, people are not even aware how much work goes
it
into this type
takes.
of storytelling,
Mm,
that you have to, aside from the talent of thinking in a certain way, but the probably the research and the different ideas that you have to put in front of the client to choose from and such. So that's pretty creative. So your podcast, Spoken Word, by Anamika, so achieved impressive success. And thank you so much for having me twice, interviewing me
of course.
prior, I think, to when Pomegranate came out, and then afterwards. What do you
Mhm.
think resonated most, or is resonating with your listeners, that it has picked up the way it has?
I think the number one thing would be just honesty. I don't know if people know this. I say this to all my guests before starting anything, that it started out as a passion project during the pandemic times. So we had a lot of time in our hand. I had a lot of time, and I thought, I'm going to just write. I write a lot. And I thought, I'm just going to put my whatever I'm writing out there. And I didn't think too much. I just started to put my spoken word poetry out there. I just started to narrate my stories, and it was just honest, raw, coming from a very deep place. And I wasn't thinking too much. It was not polished, it was not perfection. I think that's what grabbed everyone's attention. Even now, when someone contacts me and tells me that, do you want an audio producer, do you want this to be polished and perfected, your audio episodes, because all of the episodes are audio episodes, I don't do video episodes. But I don't have any professional mixer to do all the audio editing. I do it all myself, because perfection is not a part of spoken word by Anamika. I always say authenticity is the biggest part of spoken word by Anamika. If you listen to some of the episodes, you may hear that some people, when they're narrating their stories, their voice quiver. And you can tell that they're probably in tears because they're sharing something that is so deep, and they have never voiced it before. So when they're saying it out loud, there's so much emotion and it's raw. And I want that. Other people would be like, oh, I want this polished, or you cried while recording this, do it again. I want that. I never say to scrape it off or do it again whenever they're expressing so much emotions. It's so good for me. So I think two things: honesty, authenticity goes hand in hand. And the other thing would be vulnerability. I feel that it's such a strong, it's strength. People would think that vulnerability is so weakness. Why are you opening up about all these things? It makes you weak, but you are so powerful to be able to say the things that happened to you where you had no partake. You couldn't have controlled those things. Those things happened to you, and why do you have to feel the shame to talk about it? That's not your shame to carry. And when people hear that the journey of someone else who's gone through the same thing that they have or they are going through, I think that's empowering in itself so much. So I think it just aligns vulnerability and authenticity so well, and it resonates with people who are going through maybe a difficult time, or who have been through a difficult time, and they're just looking for someone who can connect with them on that level.
You know, a couple of times when you said the word perfection, I've coached a lot. I coach a lot of writers actually, but a lot of the ones that I've coached in the past, who one of their biggest fear, or one of the biggest thing that sets them back from accomplishing the, publishing the book that they want, is that sense of needing to have it so perfect. They
Mm.
are afraid of, once it's out, just having some things that they're not sure they want to release or not. So that word is, I think, prevents so many people from doing so many things. And here you are, you allowing for the imperfection is what has helped you move forward and create this podcast and allow for so many voices. So you've helped so many people by getting out of your own way. I think that is so beautiful. I mean, this, you're like an example of how not to be caught up despite all your degrees, because sometimes these are, our education kind of interferes. I know sometimes the more even very scholarly people have even a harder time really letting go and
Mm.
not feeling that they have to be so perfect and things. But you have that balance where you bring in, the authenticity, the integrity into it, but you don't allow, your background to interfere with how perfect you should have it. And that really makes sense to me right now. But I don't know if you want to, is there advice that you might be give, again, because I do know a lot of people that perfection gets in the way of them moving forward.
I think it's perfection is good. I was that person for a very long time, that I wanted to be perfect at what I do. But I think it also stops you from achieving so much in life. That we feel that success means that we can never fail. We have to choose a path, and we have to get going, and we have to get this done. But you, when you see someone successful, you have to look at that person, how many times they have failed. I say this all the time, that I have failed more times than you have tried. So perfection is just a myth. We feel that we have to be perfect the first way, the first time. It's not possible. It is always great to strive for perfection, but you shouldn't let that become kind of the barrier, where you're trying to do something, but it has to be perfect. It has to be this way. Just start just start just start with authenticity, just start with honesty, just start with that utmost need of putting your story out there. That is the only thing. That think don't think about impression, just think about expression, and then you just go from there. And so, don't striving for perfection, great, but don't let it stop you from even putting the first word out there. So once you're out there, you do something, okay, maybe, but it's a myth. That's what I feel. That you can never be perfect. There will always be something or the other, maybe something tiny, minute, and that's the beauty in it. That
Yeah,
it's
and
there's so
you
much
might be so
beauty there.
perfect, you might be so perfect, but you'll still be criticized. Even if you are, there's always somebody out there that's gonna
Still there.
criticize your work, your writing, what have you. Um, so I want to ask you, when you're speaking right now, I think that, in my case, I've had incredible teachers almost all my life, especially my adult life. I've had a lot of spiritual teachers and different teachers who they themselves have been criticized. One of, like, my most recent teacher who passed away a few years ago, we recently were in a gathering when we're talking, Lynn V. Andrews, that there was some criticism for her. She was a best-selling author and mystic, and she helped thousands and thousands of people, particularly women. And I wanted to do a project around her. And I said, we need to be authentic, and we need to be honest about some of the uh, pushback, or some of the criticisms, even though she was an amazing teacher. And I said, because this is important, that this is our human story. This is,
Mm.
everybody has that in their story, and that's really what makes them even more. And I think the more interesting you are, the more sometimes you get, this diverse feedback and criticism. But having said that, it the importance of having somebody, I guess, being a guide, or like in your case, a consultant. I mean, how important is that? I know for me, when I work with others, it helps elevate my work. It helps me if I do have certain type of self-doubts, or I feel a little bit like lost in the direction. And we all specialize in a particular thing, but we're not an expert in everything, and there will be somebody. That's why we have editors. That's why we have teachers. But in more modern days, there's different people available as consultants. And I'm not sure, I know a lot of people value that and understand the importance of investing into that. But what would you say to people and the importance of working with somebody who can really help guide or shape what you're trying to do, having like that sounding board?
Mhm. The way what happens is when you have a story, as I said, I learned literature. Reading stories is different, putting that story out there is different, because when you are looking at your audience, they come from different backgrounds. Maybe you're sending a message that is XYZ, but you never know how it's being interpreted to others. Maybe it's ABC. It's completely different. So what you're trying to say out there, it sometimes, no matter how much you try to perfect it, some people will misinterpret it. So working with a consultant, when you have a story, it's to put it out there to a broader audience that can be received by people who are just not from where you come from, but people from all over the world. So it's a globally accepted audience, right? I would say that people go through difficult times. I mean, all the time. Everyone goes through something difficult. But what is your outcome and your learning from that journey is completely different from someone else. I would say no to women. Just being a woman, I would say this comes to my mind because I've worked with authors. They've both been divorced, but they completely had very different outcomes from that divorce, very different experience from that divorce, very different story to share from that divorce. But both had abusive husbands, both had some narcissistic abusive husband. Both, if you look at it from a perspective that, okay, it's the same story. They both had they chose the wrong man, and then something happened, and there's that. It's the same story. There's nothing much there. But two women going through the same thing, same kind of story, they had completely two different outcome. One is building something else, the other person is building something else, because what they extracted from that journey, those two are completely different things. So when you work with a consultant, it's to sit out there and kind of learn your lessons through and through, and put your story out there in a way that makes everyone, most people, connect to that story, to create that deep connection. And that comes from authenticity. Sometimes you're not able to align your values with your vision. Sometimes you're not able to align your learnings with your outcomes. And so it's to have someone anchor all of that, and to read your story out loud, and to tell you that this is something that you have, and this is something that you can do to make others feel empowered by your story. This is something that you can create. Your personal brand is what you take out of your pain, or how you turn your pain into purpose. So even if you go through the same thing, same experience, divorce, okay, abusive husband, narcissistic husband, but you can create something else, and the other person, from their outcome, their feelings, and their expression, they can create completely different something else. So the consultant, my job would be to identify that which person, where does this person's strength lies. If this person is good with building things, this person is good with maybe services more, or can coach better, or do more of that thing, or this person is more of a business mind, or something that they can do. But how do they align their story into their business, create a brand that also connects them to their roots, to their story, to their pain, and creates a purpose within that. And the same thing, if you're doing a service which is coaching or anything, how does your story affect that? How did your story matter so much that you created this journey for yourself, that you're now on your way to help others? So, two completely different things, outcome.
Yes.
That's how it works.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's not something where you can, get a how-to book. That it's not going to
Mm,
be tailored to you.
mm,
And sometimes we are too close to our own business or our own, whether it's a book or whether it's a business or whatever we are that we are trying to share with the world. We might be too close to it to
mm.
see how we can reach and how we can communicate it effectively with the world. So, yeah, I personally, like I said, I've really had my success is due to working with so many people and believing that investing in myself, it just becomes, when you have two people working on this same similar goal, there's something like magic really happens in that. So as you do quite a bit, and I was just wondering, how do you manage um, the different roles that you play, and what is the biggest challenge in all of that?
I don't think that I've shared this, but I also lead marketing for a cybersecurity firm. So I also have a job, which I have to balance. And it's such a demanding job that I have to put that aside and do my
Oh,
podcast
it's
and
like,
do my
by
other
the
creative.
way.
By the way, that is also there. I also have a job, by the way. That's one thing. I think for me, balance would be it's not about sharing or spending equal time. It is kind of like finding that alignment and energy, that what drives me at this point. So sometimes maybe I'm very deep in campaign work. I'm putting my focus on something that needs to be done. I try to prioritize energy based, but then it's not something that I can do, say, okay, this is what I'm doing today, this is what I'm doing tomorrow. I try to kind of give myself so much of time so that I can prioritize myself as well. So each role that I play, I feel like it kind of reflects a part of my personality and my identity. So what I do with my podcast, what I do with my campaigns, those are more of creative side of me. And strategy, I get to build strategy, I get to do storytelling. Those were the things. Modeling would more be for expression and be more of that, confident me. So I have to nurture that. It's also a bit of self-care is what I call it. And whatever I do with my nonprofit, it is more of purpose. So I try to align creativity, strategy, expression, and purpose, and I prioritize based on impact and energy. So I'm trying to kind of balance. Sometimes when I feel too low, I try to write because writing gives me so much joy, and I like to advocate. I want to focus more on the nonprofit because my purpose is strong at that time. But when I'm like in the zone, I want to do more campaigns. I want to do more of marketing work. So it's kind of like that dynamic rhythm, that rather than like a rigid schedule that I try to fit myself in. So yeah.
Do you feel that maybe some of the work that you do as being an activist, as a writer or creator, does that maybe energize you, and there's like a balance between um the job that sustains you maybe on a physical sense, and then there's like a side, the spiritual and the creative sense, they give each other energy in different ways?
Well, spirituality, I feel like I'm not much of a spiritual person. I like to take my own time and do things.
Mhm.
But when it comes to spirituality, I think I have so much to learn. I have anxiety and I try to control. I've tried
Oh
meditation,
no,
I've tried
there's
so many.
spirituality and there's no way that you could be doing and managing, and I think you do things so beautifully. I've been watching your photography photographs on Instagram, and there's so much beauty that comes from within you. But now when you were telling me about having a full-time job, uh, yeah, there is that inner strength that would allow to do that. And but I feel like your creativity, which is a part of spirituality, honestly, like we it's tapping into our deeper inner self. But it kind of makes sense that you can do so much because you have that balance of doing both. I mean, you've one thing I didn't mention, you're a TEDx speaker. Um, so you this is something like you've achieved quite a bit, and I this is the first time I learned about your full-time job. So I think that's very beautiful. It's very inspiring.
What the reason why I don't mention is that I feel like people connect to their job a lot, and they kind of create that entire personality. Like, this is what, but I'm so many more things than that I don't try to tie myself with it, that this is what I do for a living. But that's something that I have, as a kind of like a medium where I get to be creative, get to be a person who creates campaigns or lead. I can lead campaign or design something or do something that is on a different level. But everything else that I do, I think you're right. Creativity is so spiritual for me. I think that's how it works. But yeah, I try not to mention it because I think that just kind of defines, okay, this is what it is. But I want to be so much more than that. It's
Yeah,
not
I
my
just
job.
think it adds another element to where, like, how does this person is able to do that so beautifully? Again, like without that sense of the stress, and I'm sure you have your own, of course, everything has its own challenges, but you're a great example of what a person can do. So you are currently working on a memoir.
Hmm. I am.
Tell us a little bit about that, and what is w- how long have you been working on it? When did it come to mind, and where is it at this point?
Funny thing, because we just discussed this earlier, my memoir, it has been an ongoing project for like 5 years now. It's that my sense of perfection that actually stops me from finishing it or just putting it out there. Um, I have had quite a unique life. Childhood, I was homeschooled, very different background, and then I kind of moved into a culture, to a country where I didn't speak the language, I didn't know anyone. That happened quite a lot. And so it's kind of a very, some failed romantic relationships, heartbreaks, and so many things into my life, some unique story, unique people that I know, incredible people I know. So I feel that my life has been kind of a series of lessons. If I say it's kind of my memoir, the biggest message of it would be that your self-awareness, it's a journey. It's not a destination. You can never be 100% self-aware. It's so radical. I feel like every single day I'm learning something about myself. Every single day my needs change, my desires change, my wants change. So I feel that entire knowing who I am, the way I want to name it, I want to call it Who is Anamika. My name, in my language, means a girl with no name. Anamika means that. So I don't actually have a clear sense of who I am. And I feel like it's the same, especially for women, that you can never 100% fully know who you are. And it's an entire journey. So the story is about living in that journey, embracing that journey, enjoying that journey, and not look at it as a destination that I have to be completely fully aware of who I am. No, you're just going, it's a path. Enjoy that path. Today, you learn something about yourself, learn it, embrace it. Tomorrow you'll learn something else. Today you like this, tomorrow you may not like it. And that entire journey is just so beautiful. And it's kind of wrapped in vulnerability, honesty, and authenticity. Those are just my things. So it's just an honest book of everything who I am, everything who I've been, and everything that I aim and aspire to be. That's what the memoir is all about.
Well, please keep me posted when the memoir comes out. I would love for us to connect again to talk specifically about the memoir. It sounds very, very interesting. Whatever you want to be sharing with it. I love memoirs. I love true stories because I think that they're more interesting than fiction.
Mm.
I've been a journalist for I think since 2007, for a long time, and I started off writing books, but then when the books came after the books came out, I was getting a lot of jobs as a journalist, so I had to learn to write like shorter pieces, and I would go out and interview. I did a lot of profiles, and I would interview people, and I was always in such awe about their stories. And I thought, wow, these stories are more interesting than some of the ones that are made up. And the more I read, I listened to memoirs. Like right now, I'm listening to Niall, forgot his last name, but he rescues dogs in Thailand, and he has several memoirs out. And when I listened to them, and Frank McCourt, which who wrote Teacher Man, I'm listening to two
Yeah.
different books, depending on my mood.
Yeah.
He was a teacher who, after he retired, wrote Angela's Ashes. He got his first book published at
Mm.
67, and then the second one, I think it was at 69. But when I'm listening to a memoir, the difference is I just feel like I can really learn from it because it's an actual human being that went through some challenges that I feel like I can connect to. And even if it's
Mm.
not something that I can connect to, then I'm learning something new because I can't. I didn't visit, I've traveled, but I didn't travel all the world. And so you're bringing me into a world that I wouldn't otherwise see. So I love
Mhm.
memoirs, and I can't wait until yours comes out so that we can share it with our audiences. So, you know, looking ahead, what kind of legacy do you hope to create, both as a professional and as a storyteller?
Yeah, we were just so the memoir thing when we talked about there's another thing I'd like to add. I feel like memoirs help me humanize people a lot more because after listening to because those are real people with real stories. It's not, as you said, it's not fiction, right? And when you listen or read more memoirs, you just realize sometimes when I see someone in just in the streets and I just imagine what story do they hold? What all do have they been through? And you don't know that. So when you listen to some of the stories, I there's this one memoir that just kind of like changed me completely. It's Tara Westover. I think her name is Tara Westover. The memoir is called Educated, and she grew up Mormon, and then she went to, I think, Cambridge, and then she went to Harvard and everything. But she grew up in such a restricted family with people who tried their best to stop her growth, stop her education, stop her from becoming who she is now. But then her strength and everything that she has been through it's incredible. That story is incredible. I really recommend that book. In any book, it's just one example. Any book that I read and it just kind of inspires me in a way to look at a person and think twice before I say something to them or do something. Like they must be going through something or they have had such an incredible story. So that must have two reasons or three reasons why they're doing what they're doing. So it kind of helps me also humanize people. So one thing, the legacy that I want to be remembered for, it's that I like telling stories. I think my biggest fear, I say this even to my family, I'm an only child. I don't want to have biological children, and my biggest fear is that I'll be forgotten and nobody will remember me after a point of time when my family is gone and I'm gone. And then there's just no one to remember me. So, the reason why I do the podcast, where I want to write books, where I talk to people, I just want to be remembered as someone who loved telling stories, who loved talking to people, who loved bringing out stories. And I made people feel something because that's the only thing people remember. That I remember how you made me feel. So if I have made you feel empowered in your story or helped you with anything, if I've helped you feel a little less lonely or have helped you feel that you're worthy of love, you're worthy of telling your story and sharing your story, I think that is my legacy. And it's the only legacy that I can have. It's to just leave a footprint that, oh, Anamika, she really liked stories and she really liked talking to people and learning about their stories. And so that I am not forgotten, even just a little memory that I felt good whenever I talked to her. And that is the only legacy that I think I want to leave behind.
Wow, that is so touching. And Well, you've done a good job so far, and you have a long, many, many
Thank you.
years to come. But you've done a good job, and when you were talking, I remembered. I think it was Warren Buffett when I was listening to different inspirational quotes and such, and talks on YouTube. Um, I'm pretty sure it was him who mentioned something that if you are an effective communicator, and
Mm,
if you're doing what you love and you're an effective communicator, you've already reached 80% of your success.
mm,
Just, just those two. And I thought, oh, is communication that important? And it looks like from what you're saying, we both understand the value of that, given that my degree is also in communication, but I got my bachelor's in communication. But then I decided, you know, to focus on writing books, not understanding how the communication is going to have, how they're tied together, and they're very much tied together. And regarding your legacy, once, especially even before, without the memoir being released, what you're doing, you're already serving your purpose. I just like how you've already put yourself out there, and you've confirmed and you've taken authority on how, what you're pursuing. You're not in the future discussing this, you're already in it. Everything that you described, you already created it.
yeah, I thank you so much. I
You
hope
already,
so.
yeah, like you're like, I want to read. And I thought, but she's already done that. That's so beautiful. Your book will have a bigger impact. And it's
So
just reading it, people listening. If I hope you end up doing an audio book, really, because that's been my experience. There's been so many times where if I'm feeling like low in energy or what have you, and then I will listen to somebody's experience, and I look at things differently, and it kind of wakes me up and makes me realize, you know what, things are not so bad, or there's a different way of looking at this, or everybody experiences that. So I do really look forward to this. And I could talk to you forever. I feel like you're sitting in my living room or my home, and we're having well, I'm having coffee. But it feels really nice talking with you. It feels very like a relative or something of that sort. So
oh,
yeah.
thank
How can people reach you? I think working with people is just an amazing thing, especially uh people such as yourself, who is very intuitive and is able to be both objective and intuitive, and go with feelings, and having studied your subject matter so much. How can people reach out to you to see how they can possibly work with you?
I think the best possible is LinkedIn. I am there 24/7.
Are
This is
you?
the first thing I check when I wake up in the morning, and the last thing before I go to bed. LinkedIn is probably the best. If not, they can send me an email. It's an easy email. It's contact@anamika.com. These two are probably the best.
And where can they find your podcast?
So it's available on Spotify, on Apple Podcast. It's available on other platforms like iHeartRadio. There's also Google Podcasts or some Pocket Podcasts. I'm not sure if they renamed it, but they're all major platforms that you can think for podcasts, like Deezer and um, I all the other names, all of them. It's on all
Yes,
major
it's
20 plus platforms.
spoken
Spoken
word
word by
by
Anamika. Anamika, my
spoken
name.
word by, yes, yes. Yes, so thank you again. But like I said, I know we're going to be reconnecting. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Any last words, Anamika?
I just want to thank you for having me. I think this is one message that maybe you also share. I feel just the last message that storytelling is universal. Even when we're watching a movie, when we don't understand what they're saying, their dialogues, we can still feel the emotions. And I feel that both of us, we're trying to be in a world, we're trying to create a world where people are more aligned with their emotions and they say things from their heart, and there's no need to hide your stories. I feel that your stories empower you, your stories make you who you are. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable, don't be afraid to be authentic. This is the world that we're striving for, people with their beautiful stories. Your stories are there to be shared, so please share your stories.
Yes. And thank you for sharing yours. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Bye bye.
Bye.